So, welcome to the next edition of the Rare Business Podcast. With me today, I have Lee Evans, who is the CEO and founder of SurveyMe. Hi, Lee. How are you doing?
Very good, Adrian. Thank you for having me on the show today.
You are very welcome. So, it's really nice, I must say, just as we start, to have a British voice on the kind of the podcast, because a lot of the stuff and a lot of the interesting stories that I kind of get a lot of it comes from more sort of stateside in North America. So it's quite refreshing and encouraging and really good to have a fellow Brit on the call today, which is great. So anyway, before we get stuck into that, before the benefit of our listeners and readers, can you tell us a little bit about you and a bit about the work that you do?
Yeah, sure. So I'm an entrepreneur. I set up a tech startup called SurveyMe about 4 years ago from a spare bedroom in our house in Cheshire in northwest England. Mm-hmm. And we've now grown that business to 152 countries, I believe. I believe Iraq was our 152nd country earlier this week.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's really grabbed legs of its own and run that way. SurveyMe is all about helping organisations to look at everything through the lens of their customers. Mm-hmm. You know, I to see what you do through their eyes in real time at the point where they experience your product or service. So it's delivered by a free mobile app. Mm-hmm. It's probably the fastest, most flexible, and most cost-effective way of receiving, recording, and rewarding real-time feedback.
Okay, perfect. Now, the reason why we got connected is that I've written about and commented on customer feedback and surveys a number of times in the past. And I'm particularly interested in stories about how firms have, closed the loop on their surveys and how they've kind of linked results to actions that is helping them drive better, business results and service and experience and all that sort of stuff. Now, I understand that's a large part of what you're doing. I mean, is that right? And if so, can you tell me more about what you're doing?
Yeah, that's it, Adrian. I mean, the thing is that with many survey, and particularly legacy survey systems like email or like till receipt surveys,
right?
You've got this significant gap between the experience and someone actually being able to activate or action just a marginal improvement in a guest experience. Mm-hmm. So the thing about an app and the thing about it in mobile and real time, what that does is that enables businesses to close the gap far quicker. So it enables business decision makers to make better business decisions faster and improve their guest experience faster. And one of the key things that we do, which sets us apart, is that SurveyMe enables the businesses to also instantly reward customers or employees for helping the business improve their experience. So there's a win-win in the whole technology.
Okay, I mean, let me before I ask you about the rewards, because I think it's an interesting kind of element. I mean, let's kind of like quantify a little bit about around sort of the response rates, because sometimes I hear traditional across industry sort of averages that many people are getting are in that sort of single digits, sometimes as much, but as high as sort of 15% can be like an average sort of response rate. But so what sort of response rates are you getting and, to your surveys in terms of you taking the approach and it being, a native app type of approach?
Yeah, so I think some of the software, the legacy systems that you're talking about, till receipt systems, for example, mm-hmm. where you'd be lucky if you get 1% response rates.
Right.
The kind of response rates that we are getting, the highest I've seen from a restaurant was 83%.
Wow.
That was just incredible. I would say more of a good average, particularly in the first couple of weeks of launching SurveyMe, would be between 25% and 35%
right.
Response rate, and over time. Over 6 months, 9 months, that would probably fall to around about 9%.
Right.
It really depends on how motivated people are, but certainly initially, I think you could easily hope for between 25 and 35% response rate.
But also if you do it right, then you can get upwards of 80% as well.
Yeah, that's correct, and I think a lot of that is down to how you close the loop. How much do you communicate the results of your survey to your customers. You ask them for their opinion. You ask them to invest time. What do you do with the information afterwards?
Sure.
It's really key because people say to me, well, what's the secret behind the response rate? And I say, well, okay, offering rewards will give you 3 times more, anecdotally. But the real key for me is keep it short, keep it frequent, and keep it interesting.
Right.
So, instead of just asking the boring questions like, how is the cleanliness of the restaurant, for example, that tells no one anything.
Sure.
Instead of that, ask your customer, say, look, hey, we're thinking of doing this. If we didn't do this, how disappointed would you be?
Sure.
And you'll find that people are more engaged by interesting questions.
Right. Okay. Now you mentioned the rewards thing a couple of times, and so tell me, how does that work with you? Did you say it's linked to employees and customers, or just customers? And how important is that? I mean, you talk about sort of an anecdotal 3 times lift. I mean, I guess my question around the underlying question is that, does the incentive create the right sort of responses, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'll give you. Can I give you an example?
Of course.
Yeah. So there's a great little independent movie theater in a mining town in Pennsylvania called Frackville.
Right.
And the movie theater is Pearl Theatres. Not that anyone will probably know of Frackville. So what the owners of that did is they were kind of keen to. They had some ideas around premium seating, but it was going to be a big investment, and they weren't sure whether it was worth doing the investment. Everything in the industry was saying, you should do this. So what they did is they asked their customers, and what they did is they made a 22-cent investment in a small popcorn.
Right.
So they said, okay, tell us what you think. And actually, what they heard, I think they had 200 responses. Only 2 people out of the 200 said, well, yeah, do that.
Right.
So they were like, wow, okay, so we just saved ourselves $15,000 that we were going to invest in something that our customers didn't really appreciate anyway.
Sure.
The really interesting thing from the reward perspective was that this 22-cent investment, they had 35% of the people who went to the movies weekend download and give feedback. It was close on 100% of people that went to the concession to claim their reward.
Right.
And what happens on the app is the reward appears instantly when the last question has been answered.
Right.
So people were standing there at the box office giving feedback, and then they went over to the concession. And what we learned was that the per cap, so the average spend uplift from a 22-cent investment in the reward generated $5.84 uplift.
Nice.
So it was a massive return on investment,
Sure.
and it drove traffic to the concession, and that's how movie theaters really make their money.
Yeah, absolutely. That's brilliant. Do you have a couple of kind of other examples of how this has worked in kind of practice? Because I guess the thing that I'm more interested in, I'm sure, and no disrespect, that the technology's sure is fascinating. I don't know, I know enough about code to be dangerous, but not enough to really kind of get into it to be really interesting, because it changes all the time. But what I'm really interested in is some of the applications like the Pearl Theatres. And do you have other ones that you can share with us?
Yeah, sure. We work with one of the major football clubs in the UK, the soccer clubs, and one of the things that they were looking to do is they have hospitality tables, and they knew about the person who was booking the table, but
Right.
they didn't know anything about the other 9 people on the table.
Right. Okay.
And what they were able to do through using SurveyMe was actually they were able to find out more. I think they found out about 5 or 6 people more than they already knew around the table. And they asked them their opinion. What they were able to do by asking something like the Net Promoter Score question was to work out whether these people would actually be potential clients in the future.
Okay.
So what that did is, what used to happen is they'd use paper cards, someone would fill it in, and then it would go to the sales team, and the sales team would have to work through it on a Monday morning before making calls at random. What the sales team were able to do is to download the spreadsheet by half time, They were able to work out who was going to be their most likely customers and go and talk to them during half time.
Right. Okay.
And that way they'd started warm introductions, and I think they had something like it was some crazy 1,000% of a return on the investment in the software in the first place.
Which football club was that?
That was Everton Football Club.
Are you a fan?
I am a fan.
Oh, it's like helping your home,
which also helps.
Your home club. Brilliant. Does that mean you get a season ticket for free?
I wish.
But so, I mean, that all sounds brilliant. I mean, it's all brilliant and kind of great results and kind of, I mean, and varied applications. I guess that people, when you think about the survey, it's all about, that its use is only limited to your imagination and creativity in terms of how you apply it and implement it. But I guess there's also this other thing kind of floating around sort of customer surveys and feedback and all of that sort of stuff. And people are increasingly talking about sort of survey fatigue. I mean, what's your view on that, Lee?
Yeah, I think people who are talking about survey fatigue, and it's a phrase that's been coined quite a lot recently in the media. I've been reading as well. The thing is that with people who talk about survey fatigue, I mean they're generally looking, as far as I can see, their reference point is what I call legacy technologies like email and till receipts. And
right.
For example, I was with one of our clients, a cinema owner in Virginia, in the US recently, and he said to me, look, Lee, this is the day that SurveyMe is going to die. He said, I've got an audience of retired people here.
Right.
And they said, well, he said, hands up if you're going to if I can make your experience better, will you help me?
Yeah.
And they all raised their hands, and he said, well, now, I'm going to reward you for this, but here's the killer for you. You're going to have to do this on a mobile app.
Right.
Now, hands up if that's still okay. And 90% of them raised their hands, and this is people who have retired.
Right.
And in that sense, I think people who are complaining about survey fatigue are looking at the almost the, I don't want to say the death, but the certain slowing down of old technologies where, email filters, spam filters are now just as efficient as the emails that are going out. Mm-hmm. And so response rates are going to be lower using email. And so I think the world has moved on, technology has moved on. It's not just millennials who've embraced the possibility of mobile, but it's also people who have skipped the whole kind of email, desktop, laptop cycle of technology as well.
Right, and just for my clarification, I mean, I guess when you run an implementation of this, I guess this is going to require that people download the app onto their phone via sort of a Wi-Fi network. Is that right?
Well, there's a number of ways of getting to the survey. So what we've tried to do is we always ask, what makes our customers' lives easier.
Right.
They've told us how they communicate. So, we've integrated this within social media. So, and we've created a web version of the app. So it looks like you're using the app, but you don't actually have to download the app to use SurveyMe. The good thing about downloading the app is that you're joining into almost like a social network of businesses that want your feedback but are willing to reward you for the time that you invest.
Okay. Does that mean that the app can also become the basis of a loyalty program as well? Yeah,
absolutely. And it can link into, if you've got an online loyalty program, you can link directly from the reward page that you offer customers directly into your web page where your loyalty program lies.
Nice. So, given that you're a bit of an expert in all of this, sort of, Lee, and I really don't want to ask you to give away completely the trade secrets, but if I was to say to you, if they've got some firms, some executives, some leaders out there, some entrepreneurs that are thinking about, shaking up the way that they do kind of customer surveys and gathering feedback, what would be your top tips for them?
Well, the first thing is I would keep a very open mind, because when people say, well, and this goes back to your survey fatigue, well, we've tried surveys and they didn't really work. Well, I would step back from what you're doing right now and I'd ask, I've three questions that I would suggest to people you kick off with.
Uh-huh.
The first is your Net Promoter Score question.
Yeah.
So that will just give you a rough feeling for how things may look in the future.
Okay.
The second two questions, Adrian, I always say to people from the start, ask these two questions. I call them the Columbo questions, if you remember that old TV detective. And the first goes something along the lines of, what's the one thing we could do, however small, we could do to improve your experience for next time?
Sure.
Okay. The next question is, what's the one thing we do that makes you keep coming back?
Right.
Again, however small. It's the marginal improvement. So you've got customers who have already bought into you. If you ask them for ideas, because everyone's got one idea.
Yeah.
And it's a very subtle change than saying, please give us suggestions. It's saying one thing, just name one thing we do well.
Yeah.
And then the idea of the things that you do well really sort of generate into what your unique selling points are.
Yeah.
And the point is that you're asking from the customer's perspective. You're not assuming that you know how the customer feels when they interact with you.
Sure.
The other thing I'm going to say about this is that if there's one thing we can do to improve, is also a great suggestion for business development ideas.
Yeah.
And then I would say just pick up the ones that are most interesting and ask people, have them vote.
Yeah.
But most importantly, tell them.
Yeah.
Just put a couple of questions, short and often.
Yeah.
Get people engaged, because the more engaged they are, the more loyal they become. They see that you've asked for their feedback on a particular idea.
Yeah.
And then you tested it, and you said, well, "This is going to work, so we'll test it out."
Sure. I have a thing that I kind of suggest to people, and it's sort of a nuanced version of kind of what those questions that you've just asked, but it comes at it from a different perspective, and that's around how we kind of view things around, and also about how our brain works. But it's sort of very, very similar to the question you asked, but the question is this: is that I say to people, if you want to understand how you can improve your service experience, then go and ask your clients this, or your customers this question, and it's this: is there anything that we do or have ever done, however small, that annoys or irritates you?
Yeah.
And it's just a slightly different sort of like kind of version, because sometimes those things kind of like stick in people's minds a little bit kind of longer than the kind of where the improvement might be.
Yeah, absolutely. And what did they say? Simplicity is the ultimate in sophistication.
Yes, indeed.
So just tell us those little things, because if you're in business and you're doing something horribly wrong, then you're not going to be in business long. But the vast majority of businesses only have to make the smallest, most marginal improvement.
Yeah.
I'll give you another little story if you don't mind.
Sure, of course.
This was just a small cafe. And they in a very small town, and there was lots of other small cafes, and we said to the owner, "What do you think your USP is?" And he said, "Oh, it's because we make our own cake and we make our own ice cream."
Right.
And then there was a big brand, I think it was a Costa Coffee, coming into town, and they were all worried. And so he used SurveyMe, and he asked his customers, "What's the one thing that makes you come here?"
Yeah.
And they said, "It's the disabled button. It's the disabled wheelchair access button on your door."
Right.
And he was like, "Well, hang on a sec. My customer base here is all young mums with toddler and baby in pram."
Yeah.
And what he actually realised was it was the only cafe in the whole of the town where the mother could press the button without letting go of either the toddler or the pram.
Sure.
And that was his USP.
Fantastic.
And he just traded. All he had to do was to trade on that USP.
Brilliant. And he would never have known that if he hadn't asked.
He would never have known that. He was, and I know that the bubble burst for him because he thought it was his cakes, but in actual fact, they all came just for that one reason. That this is a safety thing from their perspective.
Fantastic. So, Lee, I've got a couple of questions that I want to ask you just at the end. But is there anything else that you'd like to add before I ask you these last kind of two questions?
I think the thing is that people have this innate fear of asking customers what they what they think of them, and they fear that they're only going to be told bad things. But my overarching response to that is, I can tell you that pretty much every customer that I've spoken to, Survey Me, has at some point said to me, "Wow, I didn't know that."
Sure.
That, wow, I've been in this business for so long, and yet I didn't know that.
Sure. I think it's always kind of nice if you can get over the fear of the criticism. It opens up the way for you to get the recognition that most of us, and the pat on the back that most of us can really enjoy and need, just being social beings, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people, business decision makers, executives forget is people have already, your customers have already invested their time. Your employees have already invested their time to do business with you.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're looking at the Survey Me kind of what we do, we're saying to those business executives, okay, ask your customers, tell your customers you're going to ask them for their help,
sure,
and you're going to reward them for that. And they're going to go, well, do you know what? We'd have probably just helped you anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're bought into this already, but thanks for asking, and double thanks for giving us a reward for helping.
Brilliant. So, Lee, on to the last kind of couple of questions that I have. So, I wrote a book that got published in April of this year, and it's called sort of How to Wow. But what I've been doing over the last kind of couple of months is asking for different people's perspective on what, I'm asking two things. One is, what is wow service experience to you? And also, what do you think firms can do to help them get closer to being able to deliver that wow service or wow experience?
Okay, great question, Adrian. And if I can ask people just to visually put a triangle in front of them, and that triangle runs from top to bottom with the words advice, partnership, availability, and accuracy. And I want people mentally to draw a line below partnership between partnership and availability. Mm-hmm. So availability and accuracy, they're what I would call dissatisfiers.
Yeah.
This is what you need to do to stay in business. You need to have product. You need the pricing to be accurate, etc. Mm-hmm. It's beyond that opportunity where with the partnership and the advice, where I would say that's where the real sort of wow opportunities exist.
Right.
And I would approach it from the point of view of saying, well, to ask your team, what are the three things that we want guests to say about us?
Sure.
Now, okay, having understood that, what things do we need to do to create those behaviours?
Right.
And empower your team on the spot with those three things in mind.
Yeah.
So in terms of creating a wow opportunity, it doesn't need to be a big thing. A little thing where I was in a shoe shop in of all places Maui on the Hawaiian Islands last year, and the lady said to me, she said, "Look, we've got these outside some flip flops, and I have a particular issue with an arch in one of my feet."
Right.
And I was kind of nervous because she said, "Well, let me measure your feet and things like that." And I thought, well, she's about to upsell me.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, go on then. I'm on holiday. You can. And then she said, well, which of these kind of flip flops do you like? And I said, well, I like these. And she said, well, if you don't mind me saying that's not going to be right for your foot. And I thought, well, okay, here we go. Here's the upsell.
Yeah.
And she said, I think you'll like these because not only are they cheaper, they'll be good for your feet.
Okay.
And I was like, wow, okay. Now, for me, I was that was she'd entered into a partnership with me, and she'd given me advice.
Right.
And I was okay. I was sceptical that she was going to give me advice in the right in the right means. But the next day, I literally marched my wife back in because my wife had an arch problem as well, and I said, come and see this lady.
Yeah.
Now that was in Maui. We've since found a shop on mainland USA that does the same, and I bought another pair.
Right, fantastic.
Just literally because she wowed me with basically becoming my partner in the sale process.
Fantastic. What a great story. So, Lee, that brings me to my final question that I always ask at the end of these interviews. And the question is this. Is there anything that you would like to shamelessly plug?
Well, do you know what? I would just love that everybody out there listening to this just takes a moment and says, what can we do to make our clients' lives easier? And I'd love you to all download SurveyMe, go onto our website. You can have a free trial. You can ring us. The numbers are on the website. Ring us. My team will set this up for you. You'll be live within just a couple of minutes. Mm-hmm. And just ask that question. Ask your customers on SurveyMe, on the app, how can we make your lives easier?
Yeah.
And I would just love it that everyone learns something new that they didn't already know. So if I can shamelessly plug SurveyMe for that reason, then please let me do.
You've done it. Thank you very much. Lee, that's been great. I love the stories. I love that kind of what you're doing, trying to close the loop and making it simple. I just want to say thank you for sharing your insights and stories and expertise with us today. That's been brilliant.
Well, thank you, Adrian. And I really, really enjoy it, and I love the stuff you put up and out on the web.
Thank you.